So everything you learned in your high school chemistry and physics classes, I mean, literally all of it, the protons, the neutrons, those little electrons orbiting the nucleus like, planets around a tiny sun.
Right, the classic solar system model.
Exactly. Well, it's all fundamentally wrong, which I know that sounds like absolute heresy right out of the gate.
It really does. It's a huge pill to swallow.
It is. But according to the framework we're exploring today, there are no particles. There are no fundamental building blocks at all. The universe isn't in motion. It's perfectly, absolutely still.
Utterly stationary.
Right. And what you and I call matter, the voice you're listening to this deep dive on, the chair you're sitting in right now, your own body. It's not a physical object at all.
Not in the way we've been taught to think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's simply a memory of disturbance in that absolute stillness. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're not just adding a new room to the house of modern physics. We are tearing the entire thing down to the absolute bedrock.
Taking a sledgehammer to it, really.
We are. Our mission today is to initiate a complete, uncompromising paradigm shift as we explore what we're calling the atomic truth.
It's a massive shift in perspective, and frankly, it's a necessary one. We're diving into the revolutionary theoretical framework of Sandeep J.
And he's an independent physicist, right?
He is, yeah. He essentially just looked at the cosmos, looked at all the glaring contradictions in modern science, and reimagined the universe from the ground up. He argues that for the last century, modern physics has just been, patching holes with increasingly abstract mathematical duct tape.
It really has. Think about the standard model of physics. Every time an observation doesn't match a theory, we invent a new invisible thing to make the math work out.
Yep, the invisible fix.
Right. We've got dark matter, dark energy, virtual particles popping in and out of literally nowhere, gluons, quarks, muons. It is what physicists literally call the particle zoo.
The particle zoo, yeah. It's a mess.
It is. And today, you and I are acting as researchers conducting an absolute clean sweep. We are throwing the particle zoo totally out the window. We're going to uncover what Chavan calls the reference spine of matter itself.
I love that term, the reference spine.
Right. But before we get totally lost in the weeds here, because we're going to go deep, we need to establish the ground rules of the vocabulary. Because this framework uses a completely different language to describe reality, and we really need to lay that foundation for you.
That is absolutely essential, yeah. To really grasp the mechanics of what we're talking about today, there are 4 foundational acronyms you need to, lock into your mind right now.
So let's lay them out.
I'll explicitly spell them out right now. So we have our phonetic rule book established. First is UED, which stands for Universal Energy Dynamics.
UED. Okay, got it.
Right. That's the overarching theory. It's the entire architecture of his work. Second is SVE, which stands for Structured Vacuum Energy.
SVE. And that's what replaces space, right?
Exactly. It completely replaces our concept of empty space. And then later in the discussion, when we really get into the weirdness of quantum mechanics, we're going to decode the mechanics of RFD, Ripple Field Dynamics, and finally, ATT, which is alignment threshold time.
Okay, so RFD and ATT.
Exactly. But for now, honestly, just keep UED and SVE right at the front of your mind.
Okay, let's unpack this. SVE, Structured Vacuum Energy. I want to start by initiating a sort of complete forensic audit of the classical atom.
Let's do it.
Because to understand why SVE is even necessary, we have to look at the sheer absurdity of what we're currently doing in physics. We've spent decades and literally billions of dollars building these massive machines, right?
Particle accelerator.
Yeah, like the Large Hadron Collider. It's a 17-mile ring buried under the European countryside, just to smash atoms together at nearly the speed of light. And what are we even looking for?
We're looking for the ultimate bottom of the container.
Exactly. The final, indivisible building block of reality. The smallest piece of Lego.
Right. And it's a flawed premise. We smash a nucleus and we find protons and neutrons. We smash those and we find quarks. And because quarks shouldn't naturally stick together under classical rules, we just, invented the gluon to act as subatomic superglue.
Subatomic superglue. It's ridiculous.
It really is. The classical model treats the atom as a tiny, rigid container holding even tinier, harder objects. It's just an endless Russian nesting doll of particles.
And it's exactly like conducting a forensic audit of a company that doesn't actually exist on paper.
Yeah.
We have been desperately searching for the foundational bricks of a building that was never actually constructed.
We just assume they're bricks.
Right. We keep looking for the bottom of the physical container, but UED says we're looking at it completely wrong. There is no container.
None whatsoever. There is no box. And to understand why there's no container, we have to deeply, fundamentally understand SVE, the structured vacuum energy.
So break that down for us.
Think about how classical physics treats space. It treats it as an empty void, mostly. A passive theater stage where the actors, meaning the particles, just move around and bump into each other.
Just a big empty room.
Right. Then quantum mechanics came along and said, well, actually, the vacuum isn't empty. It's a bubbling, chaotic quantum foam of virtual particles constantly boiling in and out of existence.
Which sounds completely chaotic.
It is. But Chavan says both of these models are dead wrong. SVE is not a passive void, and it certainly isn't a chaotic, boiling foam. It is a perfectly still, highly intelligent, tension-ready field.
Tension-ready.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the phrase that really stuck with me when I was reviewing all the source material for this. It implies this massive, dormant potential.
What's fascinating here is that space is an active substrate. It's energy existing in a state of absolute perfect equilibrium.
Right.
It is entirely still, but it's just waiting to be disturbed. I like to visualize it as a perfectly calm, glassy, infinite ocean on a completely windless day.
So no waves, no ripples.
None. The ocean isn't empty. It's full of water, it's full of immense pressure and potential energy. But because there's no differential in that pressure, it's completely motionless. That absolute stillness is the SVE.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm mapping this correctly to the physical world for a second. Because if the SVE is this perfectly still, structured field, and you're telling me there are no little hard particles floating around inside it.
Not at all.
Then what exactly am I looking at? I mean, for you listening right now, look at the screen you're staring at, or, the steering wheel in your hands if you're driving. If I'm holding a block of solid iron, and it's not a bunch of microscopic containers holding protons and electrons, what is actually in my hand?
You are holding a concentrated network of ripples.
Ripple.
Yes. That is Chavan's most profound revelation. The atom itself is simply the first stable memory of disturbance in the SVE.
A memory of disturbance.
Exactly. Think back to that perfectly still, glassy ocean. If a localized tension or disturbance is introduced, ripples form, right? Now, in classical physics, a wave just washes away and eventually dissipates.
Sure, it spreads out and fades.
But under the precise, structured rules of the SVE, if the conditions of that disturbance hit a specific harmonic geometry, the ripples form a standing pattern. An atom is just a standing ripple pattern. It's a localized stability zone that sustains itself indefinitely.
So it doesn't fade away.
No. It's literally the field remembering the initial disturbance.
Okay, so if I'm really understanding this, is it sort of like a standing wave in a fast-moving river? Like, when water rushes over a submerged boulder and there's that one wave on the surface that just stays perfectly locked in the exact same spot?
Yeah, a hydraulic jump.
Right. The wave is holding its shape, but it's not an object. Like, you can't reach in, pick up the wave, put it in a cardboard box, and take it home. It's just a condition of the water. Is that what an atom is?
That's actually a great starting analogy, but we really need to refine it slightly to fit the UED framework. Because in your river example, the water is flowing. The medium is moving.
True, the water's constantly rushing by.
But in UED, the medium itself, the SVE, is completely stationary. It doesn't flow. So instead of a river, think of a cymatics plate.
A cymatics plate, like the metal plates with the sand.
Exactly, a metal plate covered in sand. When you run a violin bow along the edge of the plate, playing a specific frequency, the plate vibrates and the sand instantly snaps into this complex, beautiful, perfectly stationary geometric pattern.
Oh, I've seen videos of that. It's wild how fast it snaps into shape.
Right. And think about what's happening there. The metal plate didn't go anywhere. The sand didn't travel across the room. The vibration just created a localized architecture of nodes and antinodes. Points of maximum movement and points of perfect stillness.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
The atom is basically a three-dimensional version of that exact phenomenon happening within the fabric of the structured vacuum. It doesn't exist independently of the field. It is the field, just locked in a localized harmony of tension.
That is just wild. It completely strips away the physical substance of reality. I mean, it's all just geometry and tension.
Geometry and tension, that's all there is.
But see, if the atom isn't a container holding physical stuff, we have a massive problem. like a really big one, we have to completely tear down the concept of the nucleus.
Oh, absolutely. The nucleus is the biggest offender.
Because classical physics anchors literally everything on the nucleus. It's
It is.
supposedly the densest, most physical, most massive part of the atom.
Right. It is the ultimate illusion of physical weight. And it's the very first classical pillar that UED dismantles. Let's really look at the classical nucleus for a second. The standard model tells us you have this unimaginably tiny, dense core packed with protons and neutrons.
Right.
Now, classical electromagnetism, the rules we've known and tested for well over a century, states unequivocally that, like, charges repel each other.
Right, and it's not a gentle push. I mean, if you've ever tried to force the north poles of two really strong neodymium magnets together, they violently fight you. The closer you get them, the more aggressively they try to just snap your fingers and fly apart.
Exactly. Now, apply that to a nucleus. You're telling me we have dozens of positively charged protons crammed into a space a fraction of a trillionth of a millimeter across. The repulsive force should be astronomical.
That should be catastrophic.
It should be. The nucleus should detonate instantly. It shouldn't be able to hold itself together for even a fraction of a second.
So how did the scientific community solve this impossible paradox? Because obviously we are sitting here, we are made of atoms, they aren't exploding.
Well, they didn't solve it. They engineered a physics fix. They literally invented a brand new invisible force and just called it the strong nuclear force.
Just pulled it out of thin air.
Pretty much. And to carry this invisible force, they invented the gluon. They essentially said, well, there must be this magical subatomic duct tape that's 100 times stronger than electromagnetism, but conveniently its range is incredibly short, so we only ever see it exactly where we need it to be to keep our model from falling apart.
It's so infuriating when you lay it out like that. It's a total cheat code. It's like, oh, our math predicts the atom should explode. Let's just invent a magical glue that fixes the math, give it a catchy name like a gluon, and just move on.
It's intellectually lazy, but Chavan doesn't accept cheat codes.
So what is his field-native alternative?
Right.
What is actually sitting at the center of this atomic ripple pattern if it's not a bunch of protons glued together?
In the UED framework, there are no protons, there are no neutrons, there are absolutely no gluons. The center of the atom is what Chavan calls a condensed ripple core.
A condensed ripple core. Okay, so it's still just a manipulation of the SVE.
Yes, but it's a zone of incredibly extreme ripple tension. Imagine that standing wave we talked about, the cymatics plate pattern, but mathematically compressed and intensified to a staggering degree.
Like a knot.
Exactly like a knot. It's a localized point in the structured vacuum where the field amplitudes have aligned into a highly coherent, incredibly tight knot. There are no individual particles in there rubbing shoulders and fighting each other's charge.
Because there's nothing to rub shoulders. It's just a single structure.
Right. It doesn't blow apart because it isn't made of repelling parts. It's a singular, unified geometry of stress. It is the field itself pinched into a state of localized, high-tension equilibrium.
Okay, wait. I got to push back on this. I can't let you just wave away mass like that. Because this is where the framework really crashes into our everyday physical reality, and I really have to push you on this.
Fair enough. Push away.
If there is no actual stuff in the nucleus, no tiny billiard balls with inherent weight, how do we explain mass? I mean, if I drop a 50-pound iron boulder on my foot, it shatters my bones. Tension doesn't break bones. Physical weight breaks bones.
I hear you. It's the most common objection.
Right. Why does that boulder feel so impossibly heavy when I try to lift it? If a lead atom and a hydrogen atom are both just empty vibrating ripples in a still vacuum, where does the crushing weight of the lead actually come from?
It's the ultimate question. And to answer it, you have to fundamentally divorce yourself from the idea that mass is a physical substance.
Okay.
In classical physics, mass is treated as an intrinsic property. It's an amount of matter that naturally resists being moved, which is what we call inertia.
Right. More stuff equals more mass.
But in UED, mass is not a thing. Mass is simply the memory of unresolved tension within the field.
The memory of unresolved tension. Okay, walk me through that. How does unresolved tension break my foot?
Let's go back to that condensed ripple core.
Yeah.
We established that it's a tight, highly compressed knot in the SVE. Because it's so incredibly compressed, it violently distorts the structured vacuum around it.
It's pulling the fabric tight.
Exactly. It represents a massive, localized deviation from the perfect, glassy stillness of the SVE. Now, the entire foundational principle of the SVE is that it seeks equilibrium. It wants to be still. It hates being twisted.
Okay.
When you try to push that 50-pound iron boulder, you aren't pushing matter. You are trying to force trillions of these deeply entrenched, highly compressed tension knots to relocate to a completely different set of coordinates within the absolute stillness of the vacuum.
Oh, and the vacuum resists that.
Vehemently, the field resists this movement. Mass is literally just the degree to which that ripple knot has compressed the field and fights against dissolving or moving. It takes immense effort or energy to drag that localized tension knot through the stationary SVE. Oh, okay. I'm seeing it now. So the heavier an atom is, like your lead atom compared to a simple hydrogen atom, it just means its condensed ripple core is a much more complex, much more deeply intertwined knot.
Exactly.
It pinches the surrounding SVE with far greater severity, so the field pushes back harder when you try to change its state or move it. So mass isn't how much stuff is inside the box. Mass is how tightly the fabric of reality is twisted in this specific spot.
Precisely. You're feeling the resistance of the vacuum. And honestly, this completely revolutionizes our understanding of gravity, too.
Oh man, I didn't even think about gravity.
Because if mass is just a measurement of field tension, then gravity cannot be a pulling force between physical objects, like Isaac Newton thought. And it's not the geometric curving of a four-dimensional space-time fabric, like Einstein proposed.
So no rubber sheet analogy.
No rubber sheet. In UED, gravity is a direct mechanical consequence of tension resolution. Okay, let's test this. Let's do the classic thought experiment. Isaac Newton sits under the apple tree, and the apple falls on his head. Under the old models, either the Earth is emitting invisible graviton particles that lasso the apple and yank it down, or the Earth is bending the rubber sheet of space-time, and the apple is just rolling down the hill. How does UED explain the falling apple?
Let's look at the Earth first. The Earth is a colossal collection of highly compressed, condensed ripple cores. Trillions upon trillions of them.
Right.
So it represents an astronomical localized compression of the SVE. Because the Earth is twisting the SVE so severely, it creates a massive tension gradient in the surrounding vacuum extending way out into space. Think of it as a slope of ripple equilibrium. The SVE surrounding the Earth is deeply stretched and strained, and it's desperately trying to balance itself back to stillness.
Okay, so a huge field of tension.
Right. Now look at the apple. The apple is a much smaller, less complex bundle of ripple structures. When the apple breaks from the branch, it finds itself caught within this massive tension gradient created by the Earth.
It's suddenly free to move.
Exactly. And by the fundamental laws of universal energy dynamics, all energy seeks the lowest state of tension. The apple naturally slides down that tension gradient.
It just seeks balance.
Yes, it moves toward the center of the Earth, not because it's being pulled by magic, but because moving in that direction literally lowers the total combined stress on the SVE in that specific region. Gravity is just ripples sliding down a tension gradient toward localized equilibrium.
That is staggeringly beautiful.
It is, isn't it?
It really is. It replaces this terrifying, chaotic, mechanical universe of dead objects slamming into each other with a universe that is just, trying to find peace. It's just trying to resolve its stress and return to stillness. It's almost poetic.
It's the pursuit of stillness. That's the driving engine of the cosmos.
But okay, if the core of the atom is just a high-tension knot, and mass is just the depth of that knot, then we have to look at the rest of the atom. We have to look at the things supposedly flying around that core. And that brings us to the electron.
It's time to dismantle the solar system. We have to completely abandon the Bohr model of the atom.
Yes, the Bohr model.
Yeah.
The quintessential icon of science. You listening know exactly what it looks like. It's the logo for 1,000 tech companies, every science show on TV, comic book characters. It's a dense little nucleus in the center, and these clean, elegant, intersecting elliptical rings with little electron planets zipping around it.
Right, the Jimmy Neutron atom.
Exactly. But the funny thing is, physicists have actually known the Bohr model was mechanically impossible for 100 years.
It is fundamentally broken by its own classical rules. Let's break down why. An electron is supposedly a charged particle. If it is orbiting a nucleus, it is constantly moving in a circle.
Right.
In physics, moving in a circle means you are constantly changing direction, which means you are constantly accelerating. You aren't moving in a straight line at a constant speed.
Right, because velocity includes direction.
Exactly. Now, classical electrodynamics, specifically Maxwell's equations, which are ironclad, they state that any charged particle that accelerates must radiate energy in the form of electromagnetic waves.
Right, it's called synchrotron radiation. It's literally how radio antennas work. We know for an absolute fact that accelerating charges bleed off energy.
We prove it every single day. So if the electron is a charged particle zooming around the nucleus, it should be continuously bleeding off energy as light or heat. And if it's losing energy, it can't maintain its orbit. Its orbit should decay immediately.
It would just spiral inward.
Fast. The math shows that a classical electron should spiral inward and violently crash into the nucleus in roughly 100 billionth of a second.
100 billionth of a second.
Yes. Under the solar system model, every atom in the universe should collapse instantly. Matter shouldn't be able to exist. You and I shouldn't be here having this conversation.
That is a catastrophic failure of a scientific theory. I mean,
Yeah.
It literally disproves itself on paper. So how did early 20th century physics get around this massive roadblock?
With another physics fix. Niels Bohr, who won a Nobel Prize for this, looked at the math, saw that the electron should crash into the nucleus, and essentially said, well, it just doesn't.
You're kidding? He just said it doesn't.
He literally mandated a new rule. He invented the concept of stationary states. He declared that there are specific orbits where, for some inexplicable magical reason, the laws of classical electrodynamics simply pause, and the electron doesn't radiate energy.
He just exempted it from the laws of physics.
Yep.
The laws of physics apply everywhere in the universe, except right here in this specific ring, because I said so. That's absurd.
It gets worse. Then quantum mechanics came along and made it even more confusing. They said, okay, the electron isn't a little planet, it's a probability cloud. It's a smear of potential existence that's literally everywhere at once, and it only decides to become a physical point when a conscious observer looks at it.
They replaced a mechanical impossibility with a philosophical statistical paradox.
Exactly. They completely abandoned physical reality for mathematical probability. But Sandeep Chavan refuses to accept weirdness as an answer.
Good. Because it shouldn't be weird. It should make mechanical sense.
And in the UED framework, it does. The electron is not a particle, it is not a probability cloud, and it is certainly not orbiting anything. Chavan defines the electron as a standing ripple band or a field resonance.
A standing ripple band. Okay, how does that form?
Let's go back to our condensed ripple core. It's a knot of extreme tension. Because it's pinching the field so intensely, the surrounding SVE has to react. The vacuum can't just ignore that massive localized distortion. It has to counterbalance it to maintain the overall equilibrium of the broader field.
It has to compensate.
Exactly. The electron is simply a zone of ripple inversion that forms organically around the core.
A zone of ripple inversion. So if the core is a spike of positive pressure, the electron is the corresponding trench of negative pressure in the field right next to it, like a peak and a trough.
That's a really great way to visualize it. It's a standing wave that naturally materializes in the surrounding SVE as a direct, deterministic consequence of the core's existence. It is completely motionless. It is not orbiting. It is not zipping around. It's a stable geometric resonance pattern held firmly in place by the tension gradients of the field.
So if I'm understanding this, it's sort of like hitting a bell, like the physical strike is the core tension, and the ringing sound that sustains in the air around it, the acoustic resonance, that's the electron.
The acoustic resonance analogy is brilliant because it perfectly captures the idea of a sustained harmonic. The electron is just the SVE echoing the geometry of the core, creating a harmonious counterbalance.
An echo in the vacuum.
Yes. And here's the genius of it. Because it is a stationary standing wave, a field resonance, there is no physical particle moving. There is no charged object changing direction. Therefore, there's no synchrotron radiation and no catastrophic spiral into the nucleus. UED solves the greatest paradox in atomic physics simply by removing the particle. The stability of matter isn't some quantum miracle where the laws of physics take a break. It's just the natural outcome of standing wave mechanics in a structured medium.
That is so clean. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because if we accept that the electron isn't a particle, we have to talk about charge. We've been told since we were children playing with AA batteries that electrons are negative and protons are positive.
Plus and minus.
Right. We treat particles like they're cosmic containers holding this magical intrinsic property called charge, as if it's a liquid you can pour into them. But if electrons and protons are just standing waves in a vacuum, what is charge?
UED completely dismantles the idea of intrinsic charge. A wave does not possess charge like a person possesses a wallet. In Chavan's framework, charge is redefined entirely as ripple contrast.
A ripple contrast.
It is a literal asymmetry in the physical curvature of the field.
Okay, ripple contrast. Asymmetry in curvature. Let's break that down mechanically so I can picture it.
Let's go back to our visualization of the SVE as that glassy ocean. When a localized ripple node forms, it distorts the field. but it can distort it in different geometric directions. Positive and negative are not fundamental mystical properties. They are purely geometric descriptions of shape.
Shape. Okay.
Positive is an outward-seeking ripple configuration. It stretches the SVE outward, creating an expansion or a deficit of localized tension. Negative, on the other hand, is an inward-seeking ripple configuration. It creates a localized depression or a contraction in the field.
So they aren't red and blue billiard balls floating around with minus and plus signs painted on them. They're just different physical shapes of distortion within the exact same underlying fabric. Positive bows outward, negative bows inward.
Precisely. And this explains for the first time, beautifully and mechanically, why opposite charges attract and like charges repel.
Which classical physics never really explains.
Never. In classical physics, if you ask a professor why an electron and a proton attract, they'll just shrug and say, well, that's just what opposite charges do. It's a fundamental law. They just accept it as a brute fact without a mechanism.
It's just magic.
But in UED, there is a mechanical, fluid dynamic reason. If you have a positive ripple, which is bowing outward, and a negative ripple, which is bowing inward in close proximity, their geometric curvatures are complementary.
Like lock and key.
They fit together like a 3D puzzle. As they move toward each other, their opposing distortions physically cancel each other out. The outward stretch perfectly fills the inward depression. By merging, they dramatically reduce the overall tension in the local SVE. They attract simply because merging restores the field closer to perfect stillness.
That makes perfect sense.
Well,
It's just geometry. And conversely, if you push two positive charges together, two outward bowing distortions, they amplify the stress on the field.
Dramatic.
They are fighting to occupy and distort the exact same spatial geometry in the exact same direction. The SVE fundamentally resists that massive increase in tension, so the field pushes them apart. It actively repels them. It isn't a magical, invisible force throwing them away from each other. It's just the structured vacuum refusing to be twisted into a higher tension state.
That is the absolute essence of it. Charge is not a substance. Charge is a shape. It's the physical shape of the ripple asymmetry. And everything we call the electromagnetic force, every magnet you've ever held, every static shock you've ever felt touching a doorknob is simply the overarching field trying to smooth out those asymmetrical geometric shapes to return to perfect stillness.
Wow. Okay, let's step back and look at what we've built here. Because we've completely redefined the individual atom. We've thrown out the particles entirely. We have a condensed ripple core of intense tension, surrounded by a standing ripple band of field resonance acting as a counterbalance. And their interactions are governed entirely by the geometry of their distortion, their ripple contrast.
A completely wave-based atomic model.
Right. But how do these abstract, vibrating, isolated geometries scale up? How do they interact to form the massively complex physical world around us? Because I'm sitting here looking at a wooden desk, a glass of water, the complex biology of my own hand. If everything is just isolated ripples in a vacuum, how do they build complexity?
This is where UED bridges the gap and unifies physics with chemistry.
Okay, let's get into chemistry.
Because if the atom isn't a physical object, then a chemical bond between atoms cannot be a physical connection.
Right, let's audit classical chemistry for a second. We're taught that atoms form molecules by bonding. And they do this by either sharing electrons, which we call a covalent bond, or by stealing electrons from each other, which is an ionic bond.
The sharing and stealing model.
Yeah, and we constantly anthropomorphize these atoms. We say elements like fluorine are highly electronegative, meaning they are greedy and really want to snatch electrons away from weaker atoms. We treat them like selfish little biological actors trying to complete a collection of 8 electrons in their outer shell.
It's a very mechanical, almost psychological model of matter. But under UED, if the electron isn't a little object flying around, you obviously can't share it. And you certainly can't steal it. You can't steal a standing wave.
So how does a bond form?
Chavan rewrote chemistry entirely. In UED, a chemical bond is not an exchange of parts. It is a region of constructive field interference.
Constructive field interference, meaning when two of these complex standing wave patterns get close enough, their resonance fields overlap and interact.
Exactly. Imagine bringing 2 different cymatics plates close together so their vibrations interact. When 2 atomic ripple fields overlap, the underlying SVE has to process both of those massive tension patterns simultaneously. The field dynamically assesses the combined geometry.
Okay, so it calculates the new shape.
Essentially, yes. If the overlapping of those two fields creates a new unified wave pattern that has a lower total tension than the two atoms had individually, the field locks them together. The SVE essentially says, this new combined shape is more stable, it requires less energy to maintain, it is closer to equilibrium.
So a covalent bond isn't two atoms passing a little particle back and forth like a tennis ball. A covalent bond is two distinct standing waves merging their boundaries to become a single, more complex, more harmonious standing wave.
Yes, they form a shared ripple valley. The bond is just a localized resonance lock in the field.
And what about ionic bonds? The ones where we're taught an electron is violently stolen, like when sodium and chlorine violently react to make table salt.
In UED, there is no theft. It is a field drop.
A field drop?
Yes. One atomic ripple, let's say the sodium, has high contrast pressure. It has an unstable asymmetry in its outer field resonance. The other atom, the chlorine, has the exact complementary ripple geometry ready to absorb that specific asymmetry.
Lock and key again.
Exactly. When they are brought into contact, the SVE instantly reallocates the tension from the unstable geometry to the accommodating one. It's a sudden, rapid drop in overall system stress, which is why the reaction releases so much energy as heat and light. The resulting charged ions are just two complementary field distortions that now absolutely rely on each other's proximity to maintain this new low-tension state.
That is incredibly elegant. Molecules aren't Lego blocks snapped together with little plastic pegs. They are shared agreements in the structured vacuum. A molecule is just a single, unified Ripple Symphony. The continuous logic of the field just scales perfectly.
It really does. It scales all the way up.
But I have to challenge this model on one specific thing.
Go for it.
If everything is just fluid ripples in the continuous SVE, why do we have exactly 118 distinct elements on the periodic table? If it's a fluid, why isn't it just an infinite continuous spectrum of random ripple combinations?
Yeah.
Like, why are there specific rigid categories of matter, like carbon, gold, and oxygen?
That is a phenomenal question. If the medium is continuous, why do the structures appear discrete? The answer lies in the fundamental nature of resonance and harmonics.
Harmonics. Okay.
Let's use an acoustic analogy again. Think of a flute. You can blow air into a flute with a completely continuous, varying degree of force, right? From a gentle breath to a hard blow.
Sure.
But the flute will not produce a continuous sliding siren wail. It will only produce specific, discrete musical notes. Why? Because the physical geometric structure of the flute's tube only supports specific standing wave frequencies. It only supports specific harmonics.
Right. If the sound wave doesn't perfectly fit the geometry of the tube, it causes destructive interference. It just
Yeah.
cancels itself out and dissipates into noise. Only the perfect harmony survive inside the flute.
Precisely. And the SVE operates on that exact same principle of harmonic geometry. It is a structured field. It has rules. It only allows specific geometries of tension to achieve stability.
Oh, I see.
If a random, messy knot of tension is introduced, it won't survive. It will instantly experience destructive interference and disperse back into the vacuum. But certain, highly specific, mathematically perfect configurations of tension and curvature will hit a harmonic resonance within the SVE. They will form a standing wave that locks in and sustains itself. Those 118 specific, stable harmonic solutions are what we perceive as the elements.
So the periodic table isn't a list of particle counts. It's not a catalog saying, here's the box with 6 protons, here's the box with 7 protons.
Not at all. The periodic table is a map of ripple identities. Elements are simply the geometric and mathematical solutions to the field's ripple equation. There are exactly 118 known elements because those are the 118 stable harmonic patterns the SVE allows under our current cosmic pressure conditions.
And this perfectly explains chemical families. In classical chemistry, we say a vertical column on the table like sodium, lithium, and potassium acts similarly. I mean, they all explode when you throw them in water, right?
Very famously, yes.
And we say they do that because they supposedly all have one lone valence electron in their outer shell.
Yeah.
But in UED, they act similarly because their ripple patterns stabilize in homologous ways.
Exactly.
Their outer field resonances, their standing ripple bands, have the exact same geometric shape and the same contrast pressure, even though a potassium atom has a deeper, more massive central knot than a lithium atom.
Mm-hmm.
They interact with the field and with water molecules using the exact same geometric language.
You've got it completely. The periodic table isn't a cosmic truth of fundamental building blocks. It's an index built by human observers to categorize how different stable ripple patterns interact with each other and with us. We aren't sorting matter by its physical substance. We're sorting the SVE's memory by behavioral patterns.
It's just so remarkably continuous. There are no hard borders, no magical invisible forces, no rules that change depending on how zoomed in you are. It's just the exact same rules of tension and resonance scaling from a single tiny atom up to complex molecules, up to the chair I'm sitting in.
One continuous set of physics for everything.
Which really makes me reflect. If Chavan's model is this elegant, and if it completely strips away all the bizarre, headache-inducing paradoxes of quantum mechanics, I mean, the wave-particle duality, the spooky action at a distance, Schrodinger's cat being dead and alive at the same time, if UED solves all of that with a single continuous logic, why on earth are we still teaching the old models?
That is a deeply important, almost philosophical question, and it brings us to the final, critical part of our discussion today, the post-electron curriculum. Because Sandeep Chavan's work isn't just a scientific theory scribbled on a blackboard somewhere. It is an urgent call for profound educational reform.
He speaks with a real fire about this. He has this mandate in his work. We need to teach ripples instead of lies.
Ripples instead of lies.
That is a strong word, lies. But when you look at how disjointed and contradictory modern physics is, you can really understand his frustration.
Modern physics, particularly the advent of quantum mechanics in the 1920s, essentially broke human continuity. It created the particle zoo. But much worse than that, it accepted probabilistic randomness as a fundamental law of nature.
Randomness as law.
Right. Let's look at the famous quantum jump. When an atom absorbs energy and an electron supposedly jumps to a higher orbit, quantum mechanics explicitly states that it does not cross the space between the orbits. It literally disappears in one location and instantaneously reappears in another.
Teleportation.
Basically. Furthermore, you cannot know when it will jump or exactly where it will land. You can only calculate a statistical probability. And the physics community just accepted this simply because the mathematical equations provided accurate statistical predictions for their experiments.
The math works, so they stopped asking why.
Exactly. In doing so, they gave up on understanding why things happen. They traded physical comprehension for mathematical utility.
They settled for describing the shadows on the cave wall, instead of turning around to look at the fire making the shadows. They just threw their hands up and said, well, the universe is fundamentally random and unknowable. Don't worry about the mechanics. Just shut up and calculate.
Shut up and calculate has literally been the mantra for decades. But UED turns us around to face the fire.
Exactly. But if the universe is built on continuous fluid ripples, why do quantum phenomena appear so discrete and jagged? Like, why do we see energy absorbed and emitted in specific packets or quanta? This is where we have to decode those final two acronyms we established at the beginning, RFD, ripple field dynamics, and ATT, alignment threshold time.
Let's get into it, because this solves the quantum jump.
Okay, how does alignment threshold time explain a quantum jump without teleporting a particle?
In UED, quantum jumps are not random teleports. They are entirely deterministic re-resolutions of ripple strain. Remember that an atom is a stable standing wave. If you apply external energy to it, say you blast it with heat or shine a high-intensity laser on it, you are forcing more tension into its local field.
You're straining it.
Right. The standing wave becomes highly strained, but it doesn't change its fundamental shape immediately. It absorbs that strain, it vibrates more intensely, the field pressure builds and builds until it reaches an absolute mathematical breaking point. That exact breaking point is the ATT, the alignment threshold time.
Okay, so is it like bending a plastic ruler?
Yeah.
Like you apply force and the ruler bends. It holds its continuous shape, storing all that mechanical tension. It doesn't continuously deform into a new object.
Right.
But if you keep bending it, you eventually hit its structural limit, its threshold, and it snaps violently, instantly reconfiguring into two broken pieces to release the stress. Is that what's happening?
That is a phenomenal analogy, yes. An atom only reconfigures when the accumulated field tension crosses the ATT threshold. The moment that threshold is crossed, the previous standing wave pattern can no longer maintain equilibrium against the SVE. It snaps.
It just snaps into a new shape.
It instantly re-resolves into the next available, larger, stable harmonic pattern.
Yeah.
The discreteness we see in quantum physics, the distinct spectral lines, the instantaneous jumps, the specific packets of energy. None of that is proof that the universe is made of indivisible pixels or random teleports.
It's just the threshold.
Exactly. It is simply the threshold of stability snapping into a new harmonic. The underlying process of strain building up, which is the RFD, ripple field dynamics, is entirely continuous, entirely physical, and entirely deterministic.
So what does this all mean for us? If we synthesize the big picture here, UED is doing something that the brightest minds in physics have failed to do for a literal century. It restores continuity to the cosmos. I mean, we've been living with this schizophrenic science where we need one set of rules for the big stuff, Einstein's general relativity for galaxies and planets, and completely contradictory magical set of rules for the small stuff, quantum mechanics for atoms.
Chavan's framework unites them completely. The exact same rules of ripple alignment, tension resolution, and field equilibrium govern the condensed ripple core of a single hydrogen atom, the constructive field interference of a massive protein molecule, and the massive tension gradient that keeps the Earth orbiting the Sun. It is one unbroken, continuous reality.
It means science can actually make sense again. It doesn't require us to suspend our disbelief. It removes all the magic and the mathematical duct tape and replaces it with fluid, geometric logic.
A universe of sense, not nonsense.
Right. The universe isn't a chaotic, probabilistic machine full of dead particles randomly colliding in a void. It is a structured, highly intelligent field constantly, beautifully striving for harmony.
It is a profoundly elegant way to look at reality. And it shifts our role as human beings, too. We aren't separate observers standing outside an empty box looking at particles bouncing around inside. We are vastly complex, highly organized ripple patterns embedded within the very fabric of the field we are trying to observe.
We are the field. That is the perfect note to end on. We want to thank you, the listener, for sticking with us on this deep dive. This has been a mature, highly challenging, and hopefully revelatory journey through Sandeep Chavan's Universal Energy Dynamics framework.
It's a lot to process, I know.
It is not easy to unlearn the models you've been taught since you were a kid, but exploring the atomic truth fundamentally changes how you look at the physical world around you.
The elegance of a universe governed not by violent, chaotic collisions and mysterious forces, but by the simple, continuous pursuit of stillness. It's a paradigm shift that stays with you.
It really does. And before we sign off, I want to leave you directly with one final, mind-expanding idea to take away. We didn't even have time to fully explore this today, but think about the implications here.
The implications are massive.
If every atom in your body is not a physical, solid object, but simply a stable memory of disturbance in the SVE seeking equilibrium, and if the chemical reactions in your brain, the firing of your synapses, are just continuous field realignments, does that mean your mind, your consciousness, your very thoughts are not the product of a biological machine?
It changes the definition of life.
Are your thoughts instead just highly complex networks of ripple tensions interacting with the fabric of reality? Is your mind not a localized product of your brain, but a localized intelligence of the universe itself, actively experiencing its own attempt to return to perfect stillness? Just something for you to ponder the next time you look in the mirror.